Hey there, and welcome to Switching to Rayon from your legacy software. This is a 3-part tutorial series designed to help you transition smoothly from your current design software into Rayon. Moving from your current CAD software like AutoCAD or other starts with understanding how your file translates into the Rayon environment. We're going to cover how DWG, DXF, and XREF support works in Rayon. We'll cover how layers, CAD blocks, and styles translate from your current file into your new environment in Rayon. And we're going to talk about the model/layout spaces and basically see how the layout concept in AutoCAD translates into Rayon with what we call paper and model canvases. So let's dive in. We're going to start with the first topic, which is how DWG and DXF files translate when imported into Rayon. This will be a 2-part explanation. I'll start with walking you through how to import a file, and then we'll dive deep in the Rayon environment to see how your layers, blocks, and styles have been inherited from your original file. So basically, you don't lose any of your work. So let's dive in. I'm already sharing my workspace. As you can see here, this is how your account will look like when you create one. And on the top right, you'll find our import button. When you hover over it, you'll see that you can import files up to 35 megabyte, and let's quickly click on import. Next step, obviously, is to choose the file that you like. I have this file ready for us. Let's open it. And the first thing you're going to encounter is some questions about your default settings. If you want to change the file's name, or if you want to make sure you're importing hidden layers, empty layers, or blocks that don't have any instances in your drawing, you can toggle on these 3. If you don't, simply click on import. So Rayon is converting your DWG or DXF into a Rayon file. I just want to say that if your DWG file contains XREFs, Rayon will also support your XREFs. To learn more about that, I'm going to redirect you to the links in the description and see how that works. It doesn't work exactly as it does in AutoCAD, but we have a solution for those. So be sure to check those in the description. Now our file has been uploaded, and we can see that we have a tagline at the bottom instructing us and telling us what to do. It says draw a line by clicking on 2 points. Use a familiar element like a distance, door, etc. So basically I need a distance of reference to draw a line to, and this will help Rayon understand my file's scale. So if I just grab, this entrance door, for example, and I'll take just a random kind of distance, it will give me the input of the distance. And here is the different units. So I can change now the units to meters, centimeters, millimeters. In this case, it makes sense that this is almost a 2-meter door because it's a double door. But in some cases, you'll see you're going to need to change to centimeters or to, of course, imperial system. So this is basically the main step of import. I'll turn this back onto meters and go ahead and continue. And that's it. Rayon is now generating my model with my file that I just imported. So step 1 is complete. We've imported our DWG file, and step 2 is checking out how our different file settings are imported into Rayon. So just as a quick kind of orientation, this is what we call in Rayon model canvas. You can see that all my floor plans have been imported from AutoCAD. And before we dive into where layers, blocks, and styles are, I want to quickly toggle on our grid and wireframe mode. For those of you coming from other design tools, which is anyone watching this tutorial, this should probably seem a bit more familiar. So you can see that if you're comfortable with toggling this on, you can definitely do that. You're going to draw in Rayon in an accurate and precise way, just as you did in other design tools. So you can change your units here on the right according to your preference. And yeah, this is one thing to kind of notice. The other thing you'll notice right off the bat when you're looking at this is that you already have the same colors that you've attached or assigned to the layer colors that you have in AutoCAD. And I want to open the layer panel now and talk a little bit about layers. So you'll find the main panels in Rayon here on the left, then the editing and drawing tools, which we're going to discuss in the next tutorial in this series, down here. So this is the canvas area, which we'll talk about in just a bit. And underneath you can see the layer panel. The layer panel contains all the original layers that were made in my original file, as you can see here. And as we do in AutoCAD, in Rayon we can also hide and unhide, lock and unlock layers and make layers active. So for example, if I just hide this layer real quick, we'll see that a lot of the design elements we have are actually assigned to this layer. We can also lock this layer and then make it active, which means anything we draw moving forward will be assigned to it. Just to, kind of give you some orientation, when you click on an element on your drawing, you can see which layer it's assigned to here on the right, and change that. So that's one thing to know about the transition of your original layers into your Rayon file. A lot of times what our users will do in Rayon is create new layers and place all the imported file layers within that layer. So for example, if you then want to redraw your plan, change it, refine it, you can kind of have it as either a background or an active living drawing that you can work with. So both options are valid. One thing to note about the layers, or the differences between the logic and concept of how layers work in AutoCAD, other than how they work in Rayon. So in AutoCAD, your layers will typically be ordered according to their name, and they will have a specific style that applies to anything they contain. These are two basic concepts in AutoCAD. In Rayon, this works a bit differently. So first of all, styles are not assigned according to layer. We're going to dive in styles in just a bit. And secondly, their structure is also not based on their name or alphabetic order. It's actually occlusion based, meaning that the layer that you have on top of your scene tree here in the panel is going to be reflected on top of all the other elements in your drawing. So when we draw anything in Rayon and place it on a layer, if we want it to be on top of all the other geometry, we want it to be on top. And then this is how we can also reorder and place it in different locations. Let me show a quick, very simple example. So I'm just gonna kind of zoom in and pan this empty area. And as I said, in Rayon, you can create your own layers and then nest layers and contain your imported file in them. So let's do that quickly. Just review all the different options here. You have the more options, which will collapse all layers or delete all unused layers. Let's see if we have any of those. I guess we did. You can also search for your layer with the search bar, and then when you click on the new, this will create either a new layer, page, or view. These are concepts we'll discuss moving forward. I'm going to contain a new layer, and let's call it example 1, and let's create example 2. All right, now let's put two very basic elements on our drawing. I'll do a circle, and let's give this a fill. All right, now I'm going to select this shape and go to the panel here on the right. This one is assigned to example 1, and this one is assigned to example 1 as well. Let's change this to layer example 2. Now let's drag example 1 to be under example 2. There you go. And you'll notice that as I did that, the elements also shifted. So whatever is on the top layer is on top of your drawing. Another thing to note is that you can nest layers one inside the other in Rayon. So I'll just grab example 2 and nest it within example 1. There you go. And then for each nested layer, you also have the same settings, but it's kind of a way for you to tidy up your drawing and assign specific layers to kind of a master layer where they belong. So as you can tell, the layer system in Rayon is very open-ended. On the one hand, you're not losing your work. You're inheriting all the different layers you had in your original DWG file. And on the other hand, you can create new layers, you can nest layers, and you can reorganize your layer structure. All right, that's what you needed to know as the basic fundamentals about layers. Let's move on to the next topics, which are blocks and styles. We're just going to do a brief overview of both, and then we'll dive deeper in the next episode of this series. But just so you know, once you imported your drawing in Rayon, as you can already tell, as you saw before, the styles that you had in your original file were inherited. Styles as in both the color that they had in wireframe mode is gonna exist also in your new file. And in Rayon, you'll see that once we're here on our canvas, we have wireframe mode and we also have a rendered mode. We're going to talk more about that, but what it means in a nutshell is that you can already see how your drawing will look like once printed directly from where you're working. And so the stroke width and the style that you assigned in your styling settings in AutoCAD will apply already directly in your drawing. Where you can find styles in Rayon is here under the block panel. There you go. And as you can see, these are the styles and the stroke widths and hatches and fills that you had in your original file, including their name. So you can find those here. I'll just quickly scroll. You see here the different hatches that we had in the original file. And then in Rayon, of course, you can completely restructure and organize this. You can use our different style options, which I'm going to review with you next lesson. I also want to show you here the texts and fonts that you've inherited. If you have any missing fonts that are existing in your file that don't exist in Rayon, you can upload them, and then they will, be a part of your file as well. So again, you're not really losing any of your work. It all translates into the Rayon environment. Also, just quickly note that once you select an element on the canvas, you can see what style is assigned to it here on the right. All right, so now that we've reassured you just about the fact that your layers are in Rayon and your styles are in Rayon, let's talk about blocks. Blocks can be found here underneath the layer panel. So let's open that up. And as you can see, this is my in-model block library. And it's already full with blocks that were inherited directly from my DWG file. So if I zoom in here, for example, in Rayon, all the CAD blocks are signed with purple once you hover over them. So you can see here that the car block, for example, is already a block. And then we can see that there's a bunch more, just randomly zooming in. We have some people, some workstations. These were already assigned as blocks and not as just plain geometry. That said, you can also start using Rayon's block library once you bring in your file. We have more than 10K blocks in Rayon in front, top, and side views for sections, elevations, and floor plans, of course. I'll just quickly show you where to find those. So when you go to the block library, you can search either according to block or according to library. You can create personal block libraries and organization level block libraries in Rayon, either with your vendor DWG blocks that you bring in Rayon at scale, and Rayon's block libraries. You can see we have a bunch here, anything from commercial, residential, accessories to technical symbols, you name it, and you're going to find these when you jump in the tool. Just as an example, we can quickly open, maybe a transportation one. And yeah, you can see here that once you click on a block, you have all its information here. You can also then change to front or side views of your blocks. The next episode is going to be a deeper dive into blocks. We're also going to talk about parametric blocks, AI-generated blocks, and more. So stay tuned for that. So again, this was more about just showing you that your blocks will also be saved when you bring a file into Rayon. All right, guys. So we reviewed kind of the flow of importing a DWG or DXF, reviewing how it looks like on the canvas, reviewing the layers, styles, and blocks. And the last piece of the puzzle that we want to give you some orientation about before we go to the next two episodes and dive a bit in is how the layout concept of AutoCAD translates when you're working in Rayon. Usually when you're working in AutoCAD, you're used to having two separate spaces. One is the model where you draw, and one is the layout where you set up your pages and your views and prep and export. Rayon has a similar setup, and I want to show you how it works so you're reassured about the fact that you can kind of apply the same structure that you're used to in Rayon, but still enjoy all of Rayon's benefits. So if I go back to the layer panel, remember I said I'll get back to talking about canvases in a bit. When you import a DWG file, you're going to get, by default, a single canvas called import. And basically this file is what we call a model canvas. If you create a new file from scratch, this is the name that will be assigned to it. A model canvas is where you would actually, draw at scale. And then you can create a new canvas, which would be your paper canvas. This would be the equivalent of what you know as layout in AutoCAD. Once you create a paper canvas, this is going to be where you'd want to set up your presentation for export. And the big difference is that in AutoCAD, you kind of have this bottom ruler with different tabs for different pages. In Rayon, it's more of this infinity canvas where you can place multiple pages, multiple views, and take a look at your full drawing presentation. Just as a quick example, without explaining in depth how to do this, I want to show you a few examples. And then in episode 3 of this series, we're going to do this step by step. So I'll just say that now you have pages and views right here that you can apply onto your canvas. You can either use, a custom size or obviously a specific page size. Let's do A3 and I'll zoom in. And now that I have my page on the canvas, I can actually, as I said, copy and have multiple pages in here. And once I do that, I'm ready to place a view on my page. So I'll grab the view from the bottom toolbar and I'll place it on my page. This will open a window peeking into our model canvas. So we can see here that this is the canvas that it's pulling from. You can create multiple canvases, which is why this is selectable. For now, we only have one. And once you override or edit this view, you can start building your drawing set. I'll start by editing this just to kind of set my drawing in the middle of my page and set its scale. Let's choose 1 to 300, for example. Of course, this is dynamic, so you can choose whichever scale you want. I'll keep this at 1 to 300 like we just did before. And then I can crop its boundaries, for example. So this is how you can start structuring your drawing set in Rayon. And I just wanted to give you a sneak peek to give you an idea. Let's actually jump into a more advanced model to see how this would look like once you've worked on your file for a while. Here is a model that is a bit more advanced, and you can see a full drawing set that was made directly in Rayon end to end. It can include pages and views or pages and images to create a full doc set. So you see here a site plan, construction drawing set, mood boards, millwork, tables, and more. This is the equivalent of AutoCAD's layout space, the paper canvas, and the model canvas, as we said, is the equivalent to the layout to AutoCAD's model. So here is where I have my DWG import or the drawing I started from scratch. You can structure these however you'd like. In this case, I have my site plan, floor plans, sections and elevations, construction details, each one on a different canvas. And for every canvas individually, I have the ability to draw and edit. So as we saw before, I can activate or not, or draw in this mode, but up to you, the wireframe and grid modes. I can change my units here on the right between metric, imperial, millimeters, centimeters, and such. And also the precision level, as you can see. I have my snapping down here for drawing as well. You can toggle or untoggle whichever settings you'd like. And down here are the editing and drawing tools. We're going to review these in the next tutorial, but just in a nutshell, you'll see you have the different polyline, line, vector drawing options. We have light beam drawing options in Rayon, like walls, zones, openings, and then all the classic commands you know and you need, offset, trim, move, array, and so on and so forth. Quick note while we're on this topic is that you can customize the settings for your command bar or shortcuts to have them similar to AutoCAD or in the Rayon style. This can be done from the menu, preference, and then if you go to shortcut setting, you'll see here that you can use AutoCAD shortcuts as well. So this tutorial is all about how to transition from AutoCAD or other CAD software into Rayon, and this tiny detail is also one worth knowing. So that's it for the first tutorial out of our Switching to Rayon from Legacy Software series. By now, you should understand how to import a DWG file into Rayon and how your file's data translates into Rayon. We've talked about how layers work, styles work, CAD blocks work, and how AutoCAD's layout is replaced in Rayon with paper and model canvases. In the next tutorial, we're going to dive deeper into stylizing, using Rayon's CAD blocks, and we're going to talk about editing and designing your file using the different fundamental editing tools, both vector tools like the ones you know from AutoCAD and what we call light beam tools in Rayon. So stay tuned to learn more about that. If you want to learn more, you can always refer to the links in the description to explore our documentation, our full tutorial series, and also join our community or social media to interact with us. See you in the next tutorial.